Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, my name is Andreas Islakson. I am a business consultant who has worked with the company Autonomy through the years of 2007 to 2011. And the reason I've been brought here today is as an expert witness to testify about my experience with the company Autonomy, with the defendant, the CEO, Mr. Lynch, and how that relates to the matters of this case. It's been a very long trial, so I'm going to provide a little bit of recap just so we can all be on the same page. In 2011, Autonomy was acquired by HP for $11 billion. Less than 2 years later, it was written down by $9 billion to only $2 billion, which to some extent led to the firing of HP's CEO and has also led HP to be suing the directors of Autonomy in this case today. In addition to this, it's also well known that a few months ago, the CFO of Autonomy was convicted. So, with all the context in place, I will provide a couple reasons for that. First off, Mr. Lynch did not knowingly commit any fraud. Two, that fraud is not, in fact, the crux or the matter of this, the central matter of this case. And three, how wrong, in fact, you would be to convict this man. And as good and reasonable members of the jury, I think after hearing this, you will agree that you would not. So the prosecution is making the argument that Mr. Lynch is this genius CEO, famous for his micromanagement, that it is impossible that he was not aware of the fraudulent accounting practices that happened at his firm. I agree to an extent. He is a genius. I think you'd be hard pressed to not say that. Mr. Lynch, after getting his PhD in signal processing at Cambridge, used several of the technologies coming out of that university to create this company that is able to use AI and pattern recognition to structure big data of large enterprises, and I cannot even fathom, I barely understand how that would work. I mean, it's far beyond me. But what I am an expert in is accounting practices. That's why I was working with HP, amongst other things, and that is something I can speak to. And similarly, I think I could make the case that Mr. Lynch may be a genius in many ways, but that does not mean he is an expert at accounting practices, and furthermore, that he was able to be extremely aware of every occurrence that happened. So, the crux of the issue comes down to Autonomy were booking revenues too early. They booked about 90% of the revenues as soon as the sales made. And I believe in Mr. Lynch's case, he truly believed that 90% of the work was done. He created this fantastic piece of software, and he believed it was only a small amount that was involved in servicing and updating the software. However, his CFO knowingly knew that the industry standard was to book 70% of this at a later date, only 30% up front. And I would like to make the case that it was very simple to not know this. So then, if that's the case, I also want to talk about why are we here today? HP aren't here to recover the money they lost. I mean, they've written it down in their books, it's all done. So the reason they're here is to try and recover some of their pride. They are embarrassed, frankly, for having made such a gross overestimate. Most financial professionals say that they paid 75% over the market price for Autonomy, and clearly, due to the matters of this case, far more. What you would be doing if you convict this man is you'd be convicting an innocent man, husband, father of 2 young daughters, who would have to go to jail and would who would have to be raised without their father. And please know that it would not only be depriving them, but I believe society of a fantastic entrepreneur. Anyway, I'm open to questions. Yes, juror number 6.
I don't know if ignorance, I'm curious to hear why ignorance is an excuse. If I'm speeding down the street and get pulled over and I tell the police officer that I did not know the speed limit, I will still get a ticket. So how is that different from in this scenario?
Yes, that's an excellent question, and I'm glad you brought it up. In the laws, so I'm not a lawyer, but as far as I understand, the crux of this matter is that the CFO, it is possible for the CFO to be guilty because he knowingly committed the crime. And what I'm making the case is that Michael Lynch was unaware. And so what happens in this case is that if he was truly unaware, he was not committing this himself, then he is actually not meant to be guilty of accounting fraud. Any other questions? Yes, Joe, number one.
So you're not the lawyer? Because I spent the last 5 minutes thinking you were doing helping his case.
Once again, I was a business consultant. I was brought in by the defense to argue on behalf of.
Are you
Mr.
still
Lynch.
paid by the defense?
No, not at all. In fact, I just had a long day at the office,
Okay.
so I'm going to keep the shovels and my ties askew.
All right, interesting.
Any other questions?
Do you think you'd actually do some time here?
Yes, Joe, number 4.
Are we talking about financial reparations?
So you make a great point, but as it happens, first the civil case will happen, but if he is found guilty by you guys in this case, it is very likely that he'll be tried in criminal court after this. So I think that you have to realize that the repercussions are not just financial of your decisions, but will actually mean that a man goes, very likely will determine whether a man does or does not go to jail. Okay, well, thank you very much, and I hope you will make the right decision. Thank you.
I really